Is this the end of the English major? Does the degree make you employable? What are the skills that English majors have? Is there any hope after you get a degree in English? Recently, I had an opportunity to deliver my opinions on Al Jazeera, an international news network, and it was amazing getting to go on the show and share my opinions. So I'm an English major. I did an MA in English Literature from the University of Leeds. I also did my Bachelor of Arts in English Studies and I did an honors degree. I've totally done 5 years of English and 2 years of humanities right after high school. I'm in the corporate world and I didn't get into teaching, which is why I want to talk about this a little. There are a lot of things that I can kind of relate, skills that one has when they're an English major and how those skills can be applied at the workplace. So let's talk about English majoring and the skills. We're going to dive into it. I've always wanted to study English literature. I knew this is the area I wanted to pursue when I was 10 years old. There is this notion that a lot of parents in Southeast Asia and Asia probably don't support their children if they want to pursue the arts. Well, luckily for me, I had supportive parents. Incidentally, both of them are engineers, and I do come from a family where a lot of people are technical, so I am quite an outlier. I absolutely enjoyed doing my master's in English literature and my bachelor's in English studies. It's amazing. I would highly recommend pursuing this area, and I do want to tell you that you are not setting your child up for failure if you do allow them to pursue this line of study. One of the main skills that I think an English major has is critical thinking and analysis. English majors spend a lot of time really deep diving into the meaning behind the text when it comes to reading passages or reading complicated texts and breaking them down. We have that ability and it's a skill that we learn through practice. So we do end up reading a lot for the course. No English major has ever read every prescribed text assigned to them in the duration of their course. Nevertheless, we do give it a try and we attempt. It's possible for English majors to kind of interpret and understand deeply complicated passages of text. Because we read so much, writing is also something that comes quite naturally to us. Most of us can write pretty well. Because you spend so much time reading, you are also not just reading but understanding the text, different aspects of it, like how does the text sound, what's the tone of voice being used, what's the voice of the narrator, and what are the underlying feelings that are being hinted at with this particular usage, the metaphors, the similes, the figures of speech. That's how we interpret, because we have familiarity with the different devices used to craft sentences. So we really get in pretty deep. And if you ask an engineer versus somebody who's done an English literature degree what they're reading at any given time, it's likely to be very different. Like, our reading tastes are going to be very different because we've been exposed to different types of works, different styles of writing. We do have the ability to not just interpret deeply and analyze passages of text, but I would argue that English majors can take this skill to the workplace as well, where when we are confronted with a situation, we have the ability to kind of analyze that and break it down, dissect it, think of all the possibilities that could possibly go wrong in a situation and prep for that. I think this forward-thinking ability, it all kind of comes together because those are skills that I've learned from reading. I have always tried to be an active reader. And when I'm doing that, I'm very conscious of the thoughts that are coming to mind as I'm reading. And similarly, creativity is another skill. Now, when we interpret pieces of poetry, we are using our imagination to kind of think of multiple possibilities, to really crack the mystery behind what the poet is trying to say. So we look at context, we look at historical context, we look at a bunch of things to kind of help us interpret the poem in the best possible way. So we're exercising that muscle that we have in our brains of like figuring out different situations. And this investigative quality can come handy in the workplace as well. When we are trying to solve a problem at the workplace, problem solving is such an important skill because you're able to look at a situation holistically and kind of really look at multiple possibilities, because you've been doing that every time you looked at a poem or every time you read a text. You've been wondering why the character said, what they did. So you are a bit of an overthinker inevitably if you do study this, thinking out of the box, right? When you're interpreting poems or you are interpreting a text, you have to think of possibilities that the author or poet would not have ever dreamt of thinking about, because that's the only way. You have to bring to the table what you are as a person when you read a book. So when we are at the workplace, we end up introspecting a lot more than the average person, possibly, because we are trying to understand, why something happened and why a situation is the way it is. If you're a reader, it's likely that you are a curious individual, and that's a brilliant skill to have in this day and age, because your curiosity means that you'll never stop learning, and that you're open-minded enough to look at different sources and examine different types of texts and perspectives, that you're open to hearing what another person has to say. Communication skills. This is the second set of skills that are super valuable in the workplace, because things like verbal, written communication, if you've mastered that, then there's nothing like it. It'll help you in your networking, both within the workplace and outside of it, in building connections, in small talk, developing rapport with individuals, finding common ground, breaking the ice. These are skills that are so important. And being an English major also helps you with empathy, because the more kind of situations you read about as you read different books and put yourself in the shoes of different characters who have gone through several different life experiences. As the saying goes, a reader lives 1,000 lives. So similarly, you are somebody who has exposed themselves to a different set of stimuli just by reading the words on a page. So when you approach situations in life, it's all going to come in handy somewhere. It's going to get stored in your subconscious brain, and it's going to help you in so many ways you would not have expected. Let's talk about the next skill, reading comprehension. For English majors, I think reading comprehension comes quite naturally to you, because you have been reading so much all your life, and your approach to a text is going to be very different from the next person. Because when an English major reads, they are engaging deeply with the text, they are actively reading, and they are constantly looking out for different things, right? So what kind of papers do we write? Most often a literature paper that we publish would be where we're looking for certain things as we read, and we're drawing connections between things that did not exist in the text, or we're trying to find multiple areas in the text that prove a certain possibility that the author was trying to get at that, and then we build an argument and say, in this page, on this paragraph, this is what the author says, and therefore this text stands for XYZ. So that's how we write our papers. So we're very inquisitive and we're very investigative. There's a lot of attention to detail in the things that we do, which is another great skill to have and doesn't come easy. It takes a lot of practice to kind of sharpen that. Give a passage of text to an English major and the next person without that degree, and you'll get very different responses from them both. So this is why we tend to get asked if we are going into teaching, because teachers are essentially really good at interpreting pieces of text and helping individuals find meaning in the text where there was none initially for them. We dig deep. We are little investigative Sherlock Holmes, right? Going around looking at texts. I want to talk a bit more about empathy and DEIB specifically. DEIB, these are buzzwords at the workplace. Diversity, inclusion, equality, belonging. So when you're an English major, you're probably studying a bunch of modules. You have read different kinds of works of fiction. You've read historical fiction, you've read about world events, you've read about different wars that took place in different countries, the different strife and struggles that people went through, be it in South Korea or Japan or United States. You've read about slavery, you've read about Native American history. You've read so much, right? So you are pretty much in the know. So for you, it's going to be so different. You're going to go walking around with a global mindset, and that's really helpful because in the workplace, DEIB is trending right now. If you display these qualities, if you display sensitivity, I have learned to be more compassionate and empathetic towards different groups because I've read stories about these groups in books, which have really opened my mind and shaped my perspective and helps me bring that to the table when I'm at the workplace. You will see me getting very passionate about things like equality simply because I read books where, women had to really fight for their voices to be heard. These are the skills. So you could possibly be part of the ERG at work where you are an ambassador for things like this because you have been exposed to so many different stories. The study of English literature changes the way you think. It molds your personality and it shapes your way of life. It is something that you live. It's not just something that you read, and it's not just the reading of books. It is the changing of thought. Yes, there are skills that you develop as an individual who studies English literature. You are changing the way your brain neurons are wired. You're going to be changing the way you think so much so that people might even consider you neurodivergent when you're actually not. It's just that you've been practicing a different way of reading the world and reading books. In conclusion, don't major in English literature and look at it as a vocational degree, because it's not. The study of literature and English is not a means to an end. Instead, the study of literature is an investment in the development of your personality. Being an English major is something you live, breathe, eat all day long. And because of the books I've read and the books I continue to read, what I can say for sure is that my mind is shaped by the things I read. My life is shaped by the things I read. My decisions, the choices that I make, everything somewhere is shaped by my love for literature. When I started on this path, I had no idea what I was getting into. Heck, there weren't even the jobs that I started doing after my master's a few years ago. The jobs got created just in time. So I started off as a product copywriter, and when I got my degree, this was a new job that had come up. E-commerce was booming. 10 years prior to 2014, there were no e-commerce jobs. It's so important to kind of get into the corporate world before you get into teaching. Teaching is something you can do at any time in your life. You don't have to do it immediately after getting a degree. But when you get into the corporate world, there are so many amazing things that you can learn. So many more skills that you can add to your existing cachet of skills. And a lot of this can be learned. So it doesn't mean that if you didn't get those skills in your major, you are at a loss. Because when you start working, you will inevitably keep filling in the skills in your kitty. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this big long rant, and I hope you found this even a little bit useful. If you did, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I'll be coming back with more very soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay sane. As always, happy reading. Bye.